Have you ever thought to yourself, if someone told me these things, I could have done this a lot better or a lot easier? Now, when it comes to marriage, I'm pretty sure you said that before. If you're married, if you're not married and you're listening to this, grab a pen and grab a notebook. We're going to learn some stuff today that could help you out. So, my wife and I, when we got maybe about maybe year one or two, even further along in our marriage, we would joke and say they should have told us these things before we got married, or someone should have warned us before we got married because there were certain things we could have avoided or have done better. Now, uh, you guys would hear me and my wife would probably do an episode on this too. We both agree that our first year was not a honeymoon. Everyone like tells you when you get married, your first year is your honeymoon. Everything's gonna be like blissful. For us, it was not. It was like elbow to mouth. It was like WWE in the spirit. And not to say that we shouldn't have gotten married. It was just more so it's how it started. Some of it was things we didn't know. And let me be honest, like in a marriage counseling session, you usually do like 4 sessions or things of that nature. I always believe that they should go way deeper or talk about the things that no one wants to talk about. Like, how do you handle your spouse with an attitude? How do you understand the love languages in a way where if you've never understood what touch is, if you've never understood what words of affirmation is, how do you understand that? How do you implement that? Or mainly, how do you deal with this person who God has made, but it's complex? And that's one of my first things, advice I would give as a man. I can't give it as a woman, but as a man, realizing number one, that your wife is fearfully and wonderfully made. And because she's fearfully and wonderfully made, she's made with intention and she's also made with complexity. Now, before the women rejoice, that scripture is not for just men, it's for women as well. I'm just talking from a male perspective. Something I did not realize when I got married is women are way more complex than what you see in the natural eye. For example, you may see a woman who's super strong. She's a go getter, but she still might want her hand held. Now, to a guy, and fellas, don't leave me out here. To a guy, we're probably thinking, if she's that, if she's such a boss like that, she probably doesn't even care about affection. She probably doesn't even care about romance and things of that nature. That can be so far from the truth, but that can be an example of being complex. Something that me and my wife, when we got married, we didn't know about each other. I didn't know that her love language was touch, and that was something that I struggled with greatly. So with that struggle and that being something that she desired and was her love language, there was a lot of tension there. If I had known that before getting married, I probably would have done some more researching and done some more praying for my heart. And I probably would have started therapy a lot sooner, because those things do show up in your marriage. And if you're not careful, they can become something that builds a wall of tension. And it's just a lot of misunderstanding that hasn't been understood. Stephen Covey uses this in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about, I think it's habit 6, seek to understand, then to be understood. So he's basically saying, seek to understand somebody else first versus you trying to be understood. My wife used to say this, and before I started really taking therapy, which will get me into one of the other things I would recommend, was that it wasn't us scheduling things it was a heart matter. Now, as a guy, most guys live by like schedules. We live by a to-do list. We live by things to win at. I believe that's how we were wired. But this was a heart matter, and I haven't mastered it yet. I've gotten better, but I haven't mastered it. So she would say it's a heart matter, and you're when that part of your heart opens, you won't have to schedule it. It'll start coming to you. So that first one is recognizing that your spouse is fearfully, wonderfully made. And remember that that means that they're made with intention, they're made with complexity, and they're made with purpose, not an afterthought of God. They're like made with purpose. I would always say for men, go before God about the things that you are finding to be attention. And sometimes he shows you something that's completely the opposite of what you're thinking about, which changes the game. And I cannot tell you how many times God would say something and I'd be like, that has nothing to do with what we're dealing with. And at the end of the day, it does in some way, some form or fashion, because it's God. So that's number one.
Drew, I launched my podcast, but I actually hate all the back end stuff. Scheduling, editing, YouTube uploading, thumbnails, titles, the description, all of that. We hear you, and we've made something just for you, our done for you podcast service. We do the scheduling, the uploading, the editing, all of that, so that you can just do what you do best, which is talk about your mission, talking about the problems you solve for clients, not all the headache stuff. Now here's the catch. It's done for you. So all we need you to do is record at least 20 minutes a month, and you'll have a month worth of content for your podcast and also for social media if you choose to use it. Let's talk, let's connect, and let's get this headache away from you so you can go be on the beach. Look in the description.
Number two, as a man, I would say, get in the habit of pouring your heart out before God first before you talk to your wife. Or in other words, vent to God first before you start venting to your wife. Scripture in Psalms talks about pouring your hearts out before him. That's something that the culture will never tell you to do because the culture believes that you should follow your heart. The Bible also talks about the heart being desperately wicked. So pouring your heart out before God is something that not will just save you fights, but will just save you some just tension. A lot of times when we get mad as men, sometimes we might want our wives to fix it, but usually we shut down. That was a real habit that I don't even think it was a habit. It was just something bad. Before I started getting deeper into therapy and finding out why I was shutting down, I would just shut down. If I got mad, I would shut down. If I didn't understand, I would shut down. And I would just go into my mental cave. I didn't even have to go into a physical man cave. I would just go into this mental cave. This shutting down was a trauma response. And we'll get into that in the next one. But pouring your heart out before God, or also as the scripture says, casting your cares upon him, helps you come into a place of agreeing that God, yes, I may be the leader of this family, but you're the leader of me. And if you're my leader, I want to come to you with all of the doubts, all of the day, all of the all I have. I want to come before you first, because I can be offloading these things to God, and by the time I get to my wife, I can have a different perspective on what's going on, or I can just have a different shift in my day. One of the habits that I've had before I got married, which I still continue, is I usually pray at 4:30 or 5 a.m. And my reason is I actually want to start my day off right. I want to cover my house, but I also want to pour out my heart before God so that I don't bring all of my insecurities, all of my unanswered questions straight to my wife without me doing this God first. That's not saying you're going to get it perfect. What it is saying is if I get in the habit of going to him first, about the heaviness and the tension and the things that may be bothering me and weighing me down. By the time I go to my wife, I can probably articulate what I'm feeling and I don't attack her. I don't use her as a mental punching bag. It's more so now I can have a conversation. I can realize if I didn't do this, I probably would have started something. Now, because I'm not perfect, I'm going to tell you I have messed that up when I first got married a lot. Where it would be me when we got married, I had worked, when we got married, I had worked 5 minutes from my job. Before I got married, I worked 25 minutes before my job. Now, you may say, Drew, what does that do anything? That 25-minute drive would allow me to be unwinding, to blow steam. And I was a trainer at the time, so I was always having to deal with people. When I moved 5 minutes away from the gym. So I had 5 minutes now of venting. And now I'm coming into a house where I have my wife and I have my daughter. So that time that I didn't have was definitely affecting me. And then COVID happened. And I ring into my business out of my garage. So imagine the space now that I did not have to go and vent first. Yes, the morning worked, but I needed some more time to just let me go to God for 3 minutes, 5 minutes in some solitude and vent about what's happening. So I don't bring this to my wife. That's something that each gender could do. If you think of your spouse as being fearfully and wonderfully made and someone that God has designed, I don't want to use that as I'm going to go and just everything I'm feeling, I'm going to just throw it all at him. That's not wise. It's not even fun after a while because your spouse will start to resent you talking to them because they know you're always coming with another issue, another problem. I believe strongly if we were encouraged deeply to spend time with God, purposely letting those things go, I believe a lot of marriages will be better because you will start realizing I'm venting about something that has nothing to do about my spouse. I'm mad because I missed that lift and now I'm bringing that anger onto them because I didn't let it go. So the first one being understanding your spouse is fearfully and wonderfully made. They're made with intention. They're made with complexity and they're made on purpose. Number two, venting or pouring your heart out before God. Number three is something that the Christian world, I don't believe, still has grasped. I wouldn't say grasp, but they haven't really taken it serious as much as we could, which is therapy. When I got married, I wasn't against therapy, but I was also taught really that therapy was like you were going to become like dependent forever on the therapist. You're going to become crazy. You're going to become the person who's laying on a couch and you're just telling some stranger all your problems. That's not what my experience was with therapy, and it's not what therapy really isn't. And there's so many forms of therapy now that it could help a ton. We had our counseling sessions before marriage, but I believe if we got therapy immediately, there were certain things that we wouldn't have ran into. I don't think therapy means that something's always wrong. I think it's sometimes helping you have another perspective on what's going on. And sometimes you have blind spots that you don't know what's going on in your life. Now, but my wife said this and it's a compliment. It's gonna sound crazy. She said before you had therapy, you didn't have emotions. And she wasn't saying I didn't have emotions. She was more so saying you didn't know how to tap into those. You didn't know how to show those things. You were just a straightforward all business. When I got into therapy, at first I was saying like I need a male therapist, I need a Christian male therapist. And I wanted that, but I believe more so it was me being egotistical and me believing that only a man could understand me. A Christian therapist who's led by God could understand the opposite sex. Yes, there's certain things you probably won't want to talk about, but trust me, it's worth it. So I ended up getting a therapist, and it was a female. In my first therapy session, I had said something to myself, which helped me understand what was going on. I went to my I got my actually I took my therapy session on Zoom because it was COVID. And at the end of the call, I realized how bad of a husband I had been. Not cheating, not beating my wife, but I realized how I did not tap into my emotions. And a large part of it was because of uh, not just anger, but unresolved issues I had with my dad. And it made me feel that if I showed emotions or if I tapped into these emotions, Jamaica was just going to just leave me, or I wouldn't know how to control them. Therapy allowed me to see that a lot of trauma does stop or does hinder you in relationships. So prior to that, I wasn't in a serious relationship for a long time, so it was just me. It wasn't me with somebody else who was affected by my thinking, who's affected by my emotions. It was just me. And with that being said, things came up. Why can't you connect? Why don't you want to just hold hands? Why do you struggle with uh, articulating what you're feeling? You have feelings, they're just buried. In in therapy, I learned that it was okay to feel like I'm a lot further, thank God, than I am when I first started therapy. But that first session, I sat in the parking lot and I cried. I cried because I thought I'm a mess. I gave my wife so much to handle and she didn't deserve that. And God allowed me to realize that you can be healing throughout the whole journey. Like the Bible talks about, he who begun a good work in us will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. You can be getting worked on until Jesus comes back. It doesn't mean you're less valuable. It doesn't mean you're not worthy. And it doesn't mean that your spouse can't actually handle that, because both parties are going to come with some sort of trauma. No matter who you are, and no matter how saved you are and how anointed you feel you are, you have trauma that you probably haven't dealt with or you're dealing with, or just areas in your life where you're still healing. And that's where therapy came in at, because I could over spiritualize things. I could pray down heaven and not realize, yes, you've prayed down, you've bound the strong man, but the residue is in your emotions. And if you don't get that checked, or you don't start realizing what's happening, it's going to create tension in the marriage. So therapy became something that was amazing. We later took a therapy. We later took some weeks of therapy together, and I realized how important that was, because as much as your spouse tell you what they think, when you have another party who's professionally trained to ask certain questions and different angles, you start seeing like, I didn't know that was hurting you. I didn't know you wanted that. I didn't know you saw me and that made you happy. Sometimes life gets in the way. You get kids. Kids by themselves will change the dynamic of a marriage. And I wish I knew that one. They should have warned a brother. Because kids bring in, they need so much attention, so much direction, so much reiteration, that sometimes you're just drained to even talk to your spouse about it, or talk to your spouse, period. So with all of those changes, the dynamics of going from single to married, from going from no kids to kids, or in our case, we went from Jamaica had already had a child, and I had my daughter. I went from not being a father to being a father and being a husband in the span of 3 days. Father, husband, in the span of 3 days. It was a lot. I wish I knew that, but therapy allowed me to realize all of these changes is what's making things so difficult, because it's all happening at once. And just because it's difficult doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means it's all happening at once. The last one I would say is aim to keep fun in the relationship. Now, I'm still working at the romance department. I haven't mastered it, but aim to keep fun in the relationship. And the reason why I say that is because life will happen. Life will get in the way. Kids will make you want to um, send them back to heaven. The job will happen. Money will happen. Things will happen. If you don't aim to keep fun in it, I believe you can start to look at each other as like projects you're working on, especially if you're entrepreneurs. Something that we said our first year, which didn't happen for a long time, was we wanted to take 2 vacations with our daughters, 2 vacations with ourselves. And it didn't happen. We're not in a groove where it's starting to happen, and we can realize that getting away can be fun. Going to the grocery store by ourselves can be fun. Uh, Doing things. My wife's really good at helping us explore. I'm like a stay at home person. I can stay home and be good for everybody. She makes sure that when we're out, we go explore new things. The reason for that is you start to see your spouse in a different light. You start to see what lights your spouse up. Like what did they like even when they were a kid that they may have not tried again, they may not have done again. What what do they want? What's puts a smile on their face? That's important. And if I was to just wrap it up, I would say I wished we were told these things or given more insight of these things at in depth before I got before I got married. So I said I'm going to do a video about it. I don't feel called to be a marriage counselor at all. So this is not what this is. This is just my take on what I wish I knew as a man before I got married. So if you're a fella and you're listening, take the advice or leave it. And if you're a woman, realize too that both parties are in the marriage. It's not he should do all of this or she should do all of this. It's how do we actually become better for each other, because you're now one. And if one part of you is suffering, the other part is going to feel it. So if this message has helped you at all and you feel like, hey, God may be calling me to actually share some videos or create a podcast, we'll put a description and the link. We can help you launch and grow your podcast so that you can share what God is putting on your heart to do with the world. It may not be marriage. It may be business. It may be faith. It might be children. Someone please make a podcast about being good with children and all of that. But I'll see you guys later. Be great.